Well, hello, hello, hello. Once again, it is I, the Church Warden, aka the Wonky, come to you live in the Lilly Pad here at the epicenter of multiverse on Homebrew Roleplay. Once again, putting my face in your interwebs. Hello, and welcome once again, and thank you for joining me if you are, or viewing later if you are, or ignoring me if you are. Either way, I'm quite happy with that you're at least doing something with me. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to be here once again with you. I have really come to look forward to these sessions and enjoy them. Um, I do hope that they are helping at least some of you out there to either immerse yourselves more deeply or perhaps expand on something you already have. Either way, I do hope that together we can flesh out your experience with tabletop role playing and make it something even more memorable and enjoyable for everyone involved. So, with that said, and without any further ado, I'd like to get into tonight's topic. And tonight's topic is the hook. The hook. There, I mute that. Whew, it's noisy. All right. Now, inevitably, especially if you're a game master, you will take your time. You will nitpick and detail over the course of days, weeks, months, even years, a detailed, plot driven, amazing, epic story that will bring your players from point A to point B and all points in between. They will experience this vibrant world you've created and see wondrous sights and meet strange and unusual people. It will be an amazing and epic tale, and inevitably, they will derail it. This is the bane of game masters everywhere, and it is a actually very comical truth. There's nowhere within just about any tabletop role playing session where there is a rule that states the players must adhere to the path given to them by the game master. It's one of the joys of the game, really. So, short of threatening them with bodily harm, bribery, or blackmail, the only real way that you can get your party to stay on course is a hook. You need a really good hook, something that draws them in and keeps their attention and keeps their focus in the direction that you want the story to go. And that's what we're going to explore this evening. Towards the end of this, but right before we get into our ongoing thought experiment with the town of Silver Falls, I'll even kind of expand on this a little bit with you players out there, you non-game masters, and how you can utilize some of these to create an even more memorable character. So I've got a few that I've pieced together from both my own brain and some various other resources out there on the internet. If you look, there are literally thousands of available plot hooks that other game masters have put out for use, for inspiration, whatever have you. There's a very vibrant community within the gaming community if you look, and it's very, very chock full of resources. So I've got a list here. I'm going to go over kind of one by one and explore a little bit, and we'll see what comes of it. If you're out there listening, you have any comments or suggestions or ideas for even more hooks, I would love to hear them. As always, I encourage interaction. So one of my favorites that I've found so far, and I think that this is a really kind of cool twist, is your party is down in a dungeon. They've just started their quest. They go deeper and deeper and deeper, and then they find this big central room. And inside the room is a whole bunch of bodies. And upon investigating them, it turns out that they are older versions of themselves, and it appears that they have died at their own hands. Dun dun dun. So, one of the things I love about this is, number one, it's an immediate investment for every character in your party. Why am I on the floor? Why is this older version of me dead on the floor? And why does it look like we've killed each other? So right there, the power of this hook is that you have drawn them in simply because they're already involved, whether they like it or not. Um, Now, of course, where you go with this is wide open. I mean, there's so many opportunities as to why this has happened, how this has happened, and you can explore any number of them. And in fact, in some cases, if you leave it loose, you can even let the party guide the story in the direction they want it to go based upon their choices and their reactions to it. But I really love this one because it's a little dark, and it's, like I said, it's an immediate investment by the party, whether they like it or not. Another one I found is uh, is actually kind of an epilogue to an existing adventure. Let's say that your party has gone through a dungeon, or an adventure or whatnot, and they've gotten all the way to the end, and at the end they find one of their own party members bound and gagged in a cell. The ironic part of this is that person is also still standing there next to you. So once again, you have an immediate investment. You have the classic Freaky Friday, or the standoff with the which one's the real guy, that type of thing. Um, Once again, this is a cause for alarm. Um, as a dungeon master myself, I have actually turned players against one another intentionally. One of my favorite instances was I had a rogue go off to scout, fell into a pit trap, and down in the bottom of the pit trap was a doppelganger who, as he lay dying, read his mind, made himself look like him, joined the party. I pulled the player aside and said, "This is what's happened. Your character is gone, but I want you to play the doppelganger and attempt to get your party members, one by one, singled off and kill them." And honestly, he was very excited to do it. And I imagine a lot of your players probably would be for a similar situation. You'd be surprised how evil they can be. And you players know exactly what I'm talking about. Um, but this is a similar situation. It immediately brings up the concept of, have we been betrayed? Have we been invaded by some outside force? Is this a trick laying on the floor bound in front of me? Have we been tricked this whole time? Um, there's a lot of options here. And I really think this is another really good one for the power of its immediate investment opportunity by your players. It'll immediately grab their attention. Um, let's see here. Another one I have here. It's also a very interesting one, a little Lovecraftian maybe even, but fun. I think it could really lead to some interesting things. Is um, your party returns to the town, village, city, whatever, their home base. It could be anywhere really that they've been before, but they ride up, and the guards are immediately just completely startled, just taken aback by their return, shocked even. Um, they refuse to tell you anything about it, and they insist on showing you. So they lead you to the center of town, to the cemetery, and show you where they buried you over 100 years ago. So once again, as I've stated before, we have an immediate investment opportunity. You have missing time, or the potential of a farce of some type of shenanigan that has led people to believe that this is true. Um, Also, I think it'll open up a bit of an existential crisis for some of them, and that's always fun, especially for paladins and clerics, if you happen to be playing in a fantasy environment. And of course, just to point out once again, any of these could be feasibly played out in any tabletop role playing setting, so don't be afraid to try new things and branch out. So, um, just kind of carrying on with that, uh, I think this would be a really good city hook. And city adventures are unique. I mean, a classic dungeon crawl is one thing. You kind of have a given direction. You can force a direction because the party's down there. They're looking for something. They have only a certain number of ways they can go. An urban setting, an urban adventure, or even a wilderness adventure for that matter, is a wide open plateau of possible direction. So you really, if you're playing in that environment, you really have to hook them in to, if you want them to not uh, deviate from the course that you've set forward. So this could be an interesting one. The party finds out that there's a vigilante in the town or city or wherever that's been killing off members of the city guard. And if they investigate the city guard, they find out that each one of the members that have fallen have a matching tattoo. So now this one's not quite as powerful as far as the immediate investment, but it's a familiar enough story base, I think, that people could feel some type of nostalgic pull towards it. Who is this masked vigilante? It's the little kid in us that all love superheroes, Batman, especially that type of feel to it. And you can go a lot of directions with this, really. And I would, in a situation like this, not be afraid to twist it up a bit. Are they all just really good friends? Maybe they went through training together and got similar tattoos, not unlike our current military guys. They'll go through a deployment or even boot camp and come out with a themed or matching tattoos just to commemorate the situation and the fraternity or the togetherness that they got to. So that wouldn't be an impossible stretch right there. They could be part of a cult or a conspiracy that's underground that the vigilantes found out about or been victim to and is lashing out against, because who do you turn to when the city guard is the ones causing the harm? Um, Same time, it could just be a sociopath, a serial killer running through city. So, and then these are the more obvious options, I think. And of course, you could be very creative, and I'd love to hear, once again, any ideas you have on any of these, how you would go about fleshing them out. I love to hear you guys' stories when you send them to me. It inspires me a lot. It gives me ideas, which, who can't use that in a situation of a game master? So just keeping on. We don't want to hang too much, but I'll be watching stream. If any of you do have any suggestions, please feel free to pop in there. Um, Once again, I this is probably one of my favorites. I stumbled across this one actually on a Facebook group. I was very impressed with this one. What are my thoughts on the campaign hooks that occur in taverns? Well, a tavern's a trope, obviously, but at the same time, it's a trope for a reason. Um, it's a trope because it works. It's a very simple way to gather a group of people together. I mean, a lot of people, and I've seen it happen many times. It's really a lot more common than not in the early days of D&D, especially, that you would just roll your characters up and you would start the game with the understanding that you've known each other previous to this, and you would just meet at a tavern, and a hooded stranger would come up and hire you to do whatever. And it's fine. It's fine. The hook, in that sense, works. It's not necessarily anything terribly memorable, and unless what the quote unquote hooded figure is offering, it doesn't really inspire the party. I don't think. That's really depends on what they're offering. And greed is a great motivator, and greed is a very powerful tool for a game master to use. So in that sense, it works. It does work. Um, I think that the group sitting separately in a tavern and the game master just kind of hoping that they'll meet and speak and come together is a little chaotic and potentially disruptive, because as I've started off with all of this, your players will inevitably derail your best attempts to streamline any type of story. It's just the nature of the game, and I think the tavern trope can lead to that becoming a greater possibility. But beyond that, it still works. It still works, and I've seen some creative ways that people have started adventures in taverns. Similarly, I mean, let's not forget that the greatest fantasy adventure of all time actually kind of kicked off in a tavern. If you go back and look at the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Sam and Frodo and Merry and Pippin met up with Aragorn in the tavern at the Prancing Pony in the town of Bree, and that's really what kicked off their adventure. You had the backstory of the Shire and Gandalf and everything, but Bree is where the party really started coming together, and they kind of went from there to Rivendell, so on and so forth. But yeah, it works. So yeah, sorry to go off on a tangent there. But as I said, this next one is a really big favorite of mine, and I'd actually love to see this implemented just to see a party's reaction to it. And that is a village that the party happens to be in or has been hired to investigate, whichever. They could have met in a tavern and somebody paid them to do this. But every night the villagers sleepwalk into the sea, and then come morning they wash up the next day on the beach and carry on as if nothing happened. And for me, as I've said, I'm a real big fan of horror and science fiction myself, and I do like to integrate these things into my game. And I think this type of hook is a perfect lead-in for a story like that. It's very Lovecraftian. It's very Twilight Zone, Outer Limits. It's got that WTF kind of feel to it. Once again, there's a whole lot of places you could go with this. It's reminiscent of like things like the Dunwich Horror and certain aspects of Stephen King. I think you could go a lot of places with this as far as the investigation, and I think it could potentially open up a biome that really gets neglected, I think, in tabletop gaming, which is the underwater settings. I've played in a few of them, and it really it offers this really unique claustrophobia. And I don't mean like, oh my god, I'm terrified to feel the walls closing in, but for your characters, being in an environment that's hostile, where they have to have some type of either mechanism or potion or magic, Deus Ex Machina type device that allows them to breathe and function, it's a struggle and it's a constant danger and a threat to them, especially if you go deep, deep down. Then there's creatures that live there natively that are a threat to your party and immediately have the upper hand, even if on land they're fairly weak. And it allows you to open up some really unique elements for that. Some really unique beasties as well that you don't really see very often. In fact, one of my favorites is one that actually uses their belief to sculpt reality. Their deity only exists because they have believed him to be enough so much that he sprung into being. Bonus XP for anyone who can name what race that is for me in chat, because it's a fun one. But this next one, once again, is it's a little dark, but I think it's dark in a way of making your characters think about their actions a little bit more. I'm sure you all heard the trope of the murder hobo party, the party that just kind of slaughters their way through every adventure. Oh, I like what the tavern's got on tap. Let me kill the barkeep and take the keg. That type of thing. And whereas me personally, I'll nip that in the bud pretty quickly with consequences, which I hope you will do as well, because it's very disruptive once again. Unless everyone's on board, of course, have fun. But I think in this particular case, it really makes them think about their actions a little more. So in this particular hook, a previously slain foe, be it innocent or otherwise, keeps appearing in crowds but disappearing before they have a chance to get to them. So they're being followed by the quote unquote ghost of a fallen foe or somebody they've slain even errantly in the past. Um, this, I think, would actually make a really excellent little side adventure, a little side hook in an ongoing campaign, if you have one going. And I can promise you, as a game master myself, and I imagine just about every other game master would probably agree, that over the course of a lengthy campaign, you have to break up the monotony a little bit every now and then. Just throw a little something extra in there, um, because Krakenthal, the Uber Lich that's been dogging the party for the last 15 years, back and forth. Sometimes they need a break too. Sometimes they want to just kind of blow off some steam and remember that they're more than just the heroes of that one story. And it's a good way to kind of break up the monotony of a really lengthy campaign. I think this one actually could easily tie into an existing campaign, a side character, a lieutenant, somebody who accidentally got in the way during a big fight, somebody that the party killed to get information, whatever. It could be so many things depending on the details of your game, that I think this one plays out very easy. And since you've already got somebody targeted within the group, or the entire group targeted by something that could be supernatural, or something a little more subterfuge based, it immediately kind of gains a little bit more of that investment once again from your group, because they're targeted. They're automatically part of that story, whether they want to be or not. They're going to have to deal with it, or probably not sleep very well. So it's a really good one in that respect. This next one I actually used myself once, so I'm going to bring it up. We had an evil party. It was supposed to be a one shot. It kind of ended up being more than that. But the hook I used was an old hermit let slip a secret about a ship that had washed up in the desert filled with ancient treasure. Now, in my game, the evil party had just returned from a successful heist and were trying to hide out. And they found out about the secret. There was apparently a treasure on the ship that made what they had stolen look paltry. So, of course, their interest got piqued. I believe they killed the hermit, rode out into the desert and found the ship and explored the ship. And over the course of exploring the ship, discovered that the ship was indeed an ancient and gigantic mimic, and they were inside of it. Which you don't get to throw ancient gigantic mimics out very often, but it was a very fun one for me as a game master, and I think they enjoyed it from the reactions I got. So that was a fun hook to use, and I was actually inspired by an old radio show from the 1940s for that one. So don't be afraid to reach back pretty far. There's a lot of good hooks out there if you need inspiration. The next one I have here is this is a fun one. If you want to mess with your players, and every game master likes to mess with their players. If you don't, you should probably try it, because it's a lot of fun. But while attending the feast at the invitation of a ruler, a king, or whatever, the priest or paladin, whatever holy creature or religious character you have in your party, gets a vision from their deity that they must kill your host. They must kill the ruler they've been invited by. Now, this is a good way to bring a little contention into your party. Now, infighting is something you do generally want to try to avoid, but a little bit of tension between players is not only normal, but I think adds to the story. I mean, it's great when your party's all friends and they all get along real well and they're a great team, work together. That's great, and it's as a player and a game master, it's a bit of a unicorn when it does happen. In fact, I have to give a shout out to my crew we play with on the weekends. They are an amazing group of really tremendous role players who play well together. But I digress. This is one of those situations where you can bring in a little bit of contention. Why is, especially in the case of a paladin, why is Sir, what are you doing? Suddenly wanting to kill the king who invited us to this grand feast. You know, has he gone mad? Is his god gone mad? I don't follow his religion. Like, there's a lot of points of contention the rest of your party could come up with. Or they could murder hobo it and just go murder the guy, and then your paladin is guilty of murder. And that's always fun if you really want to mess with your paladin. So, let's see. I got about two more here, and then we'll get started on fleshing out Silver Falls a little bit more, unless anybody comes up with anything they want to chat about further. This next one is, I think it would work really well on a lower level party, and I'm very fond of lower level parties because they the threat is more real. I think, especially in D&D, the threat is more real. They have a lot less ability. They have a lot less survivability. So the smaller threats suddenly become a lot more prevalent in their field of view. So this one, the party is overcome with a sleep, a magical sleep of some sort, and awakens to find their souls trapped in dolls, and then forced to be used as a young giant's playthings in an enormous dollhouse. I really dig this one. I think this is a great idea. I've seen a similar campaign somewhat in Ravenloft, but once again, it was obviously Ravenloft, so it was slightly darker. So in this, you've basically, even if they were a more powerful party, you've stripped them of their abilities. They're basically trapped in ragdoll bodies. They no longer have their strength or their basic stats. They don't have their abilities. They don't have their gear. You've taken that all away and forced them to rely on their wits and their diplomacy to get out of the situation and get back into their bodies wherever they may be. Honestly, I would love to sit down and pen out an entire adventure based on this. In fact, I may, and I promise if I do, I'll make it available to anybody out there who wants to play test it or run it once it's done. But I would really love to sink my teeth into that story. It's one of my favorites in this list by far. And last but not least, the last hook I have for you this evening, grand number 10, is a little bit of a swindle. And swindles are great fun to antagonize your players. And in this case, the party is hired to complete a night raid on a nearby goblin camp. Once again, good for a low-level party especially. So a night raid on a goblin camp that's been terrorizing the village, town, whatever. But upon completion of their raid, which goes smashingly well and seems almost too easy, they realize that the goblins were just disguised halflings who are gagged and have weapons tied to their hands. I think this one could really, it's very dark, obviously, but it could really go some interesting ways. It opens up vigilantism, it opens up a cause for vengeance. Any holy characters in the party, it opens up not only retribution, but redemption arcs. There's always the chance they could find out what's going on halfway through. There's always a chance they could slaughter the entire village before they realize what's happening. It offers some really, I think, emotionally driven roleplay opportunities too in this, because it is a very dark and evil double cross. Somebody has forced your generally, not always, but your generally good aligned party to do something horrific. And now they have to deal with the consequences, and how are they going to deal with it? How are they going to make up for it, or seek revenge for it? Who's done this to them? Was it some master plot? And why this little community of halflings? There's a lot of questions that would need to be answered in this case, and I really think that um, it could start a really interesting storyline for just about any character put in this position. So before I switch over to the thought experiment with Silver Falls, I would like to, because I mentioned it earlier, just point out that these types of ideas, these hooks, for instance, can be used in the same regard for a player seeking to flesh out their character a little bit better. It's one thing, and once again, as we talked with Chance earlier, there are tropes out there for backgrounds, for plot hooks, much like the tavern trope, and you see them in a lot of player backgrounds as well. If you look up D&D memes, you're going to run across dozens of them. And of course, as I said earlier as well, there's nothing wrong with a trope. It works because it works. It's a trope because it works. It's a simple and effective tool to build a background quickly and easily. But these types of stories, these types of plot hooks, even open-ended as they may be, could be a launch pad for a character's story arc based upon their background. Let's say that your character was part of the village who sleptwalk into the sea every morning, every night, and washed up with no memory of what happened every day. This could be some horrible part of your backstory, for instance, that you ran away from the town and began a life of adventuring just to get away from whatever curse was upon that damnable place. And you swore that someday when you were stronger, you'd return and save your fellow townsfolk or whatever have you. But just from that little bit, as you can see, like it's a very interesting backstory, I think, for a character. It's something that drives you. It's something that helps build who that character is and what motivates them. And from a unique standpoint, from one of this horrific occurrence that occurred, and I think it's a great tool to build and flesh out, as we spoke about in our last episode, the spirit of the thing. So please, by all means, like use any of these ideas. Send me yours, even if you watch this after the fact. Join us on our Discord. Get in touch with us through Twitch, through Facebook, through Twitter. In any of the links down below. Please reach out. Let us know what you think. I want to hear your ideas. And of course, we're always looking for people to join our community as well. So please pop on Discord, meet everybody, and have a chat with us. And maybe we'll even do some gaming together. So that being said, we'll go ahead and we'll move on to our little thought experiment with our lovely little growing burg of Silver Falls, which is starting to flesh out slowly but surely. And of course, just to point out that the lovely graphic I have over here, if you look, is a piece of art by Stephen Rhodes. You can see the link there to the website where that link will show you all of his tremendous, fantastic artworks. You can get them on t-shirts. I would look actually very good in that if anyone wants to buy me one. But yeah, give him a check out. I think he's got some amazing stuff there. So, quick recap. Silver Falls, little town. We have a constitutional monarchy, appointed burgomaster, 6 elected representatives covering the primary points of running their town. We have a population of 1,500. We have a burnt crows cell, which is a terrorist cell, depending on what side of that argument your characters fall on. We worked out the history of the town, how Corky and Kangas founded it, and there was a fight over misspent funds. Kangas was drunk. Corky was caught in a misunderstanding because Kangas was more charismatic, and they drove poor Corky out of town. Um, rumored is that Corky is now a werewolf that stalks the forest outside of town at night, and the burnt crows use that story to operate in the woods and spread fear. Now, one of the suggestions that came in via uh, Discord, thanks to our lovely Master Misunderstood, um, was that the local leader of the Burnt Crows in Silver Falls is a therapist or psychologist, somebody that specializes in body image issues to help the people get past issues with their changed faces, and uses his song to make people feel like they are the cursed ones. So now some of this I was a little unsure of, just I think the changed faces. They may be referring to the other Shanakesians, which in our homebrew world is a race of people who are scarred. But I like the idea that the Burnt Crows leader is actually hiding in plain sight and functioning probably within the order of the benevolence as a specialist in mental maladies, and uses that station to actually seed doubt and fear and low self-esteem in the people that he's trying to undermine. I really, really actually like that idea, and I think therein, and also one of the reasons why I made sure to include that, is it offers a very substantial new plot hook, I think, should anyone come to visit Silver Falls. Now, we already have the potential of the immortal Corky, the werewolf, stalking through the blasted waste of a woodland outside the borders of our village. And we also know that the Burnt Crows use this as a fear tactic to keep people out of the woods so that they have a place to operate. Um, I'd like to think that maybe our Burnt Crow's leader here could actually use his station and skills to actually concrete that fear even further, allowing them even more space to move out in the outskirts of the town itself. Now, there is also always the possibility that the lycanthrope in the woods is actually real. In fact, based upon our homebrew world being a little bleak and dark, it wouldn't be far fetched for that to actually happen either. Um, since it is a lycanthrope, we have to also be aware of the possibility that since he was an exile, he might willingly actually side with the Burnt Crows in this particular instance, allowing them to work under the watchful eye of a very powerful being, and do so with impunity. So I think as far as plot hooks go, we actually have a pretty good one. Um, Now, plot hooks within a town, as we spoke about earlier, a little harder to manage than they are down in a dungeon, because down in the dungeon, you obviously have a lot less direction you can go. The only way to really derail a dungeon completely is to either die or leave. So, um, urban settings like this are much, much more difficult. So, I would say in this particular instance, a plot hook would come about in the form of the Burgermeister and the Council of Representatives probably tying down the party, with the purpose of either finding the truth about the lycanthrope in the woods, in which case they may know all the details. They may be fully aware that this is a factual thing and have kept that from their people so as not to, I don't know, solidify the arguments of the Burnt Crows or solidify their place of power, or potentially lend to this as a recruitment tool for them, maybe even. So let's say they pull the party aside, they hire them out. Don't tell them that the lycanthrope is a real thing. Tell them that it's fake, but they need to bring down the leaders of this burnt crow cell that exists somewhere within the city. Um, I mean, right there, honestly, you have a solid, a solid beginning of an adventure, I think. And once again, I think it offers a lot of potential intrigue and subterfuge. There's a lot of room for backstabbing and double crossing, which is always a great uh, tool. I think turnabout. Um, it worked great for Alfred Hitchcock. It'll work good for you too. And it could come from multiple locations. I mean, the Burnt Crows are not trusting people. They're all a race that somebody tried to obliterate. They're scarred. They live in hiding. They're untrusting to begin with. And if they see the party as a potential threat, they'd probably just as soon remove them from the equation as talk to them. Whereas the Bechtlerites are very stoic, very Spartan, very deeply intellectual and philosophic people. Um, Once again, they would see the Burnt Crows as a disruption to their way of life, their sense of industry and economy, and would want them removed from the picture so that they would be free to expand and grow within those dynamics that they deem uh, the most valuable according to their culture. So this puts the party in a particularly precarious predicament where they now have to choose a side. And welcome, Master Mist. Yes, yes, you've inspired a great deal this evening. But yeah, I think it would actually put the party in a very interesting predicament based on them having to choose a side. It puts them in that situation where if they've taken the job, do they betray their employer if they decide that the the burnt crow cell is um, something that actually has merit in existing and they need to be defended and backed up, or are they going to side with the legality of the system and go with what they've been hired to do? Um, and just a quick side point, this is one of those instances where you really have to separate law from good based on the alignment scale. A true lawful reaction to this would be to follow the letter of the law according to the lay of the land and do what you were hired to do. Whereas the good aspect, excluding law, let's say chaotic good, for instance, might be more inclined to side with the Shawneesian terror cell because they feel that their people have been slighted and have been living under the thumb of oppression all this time. And since they are the victim in their eyes, the good thing to do would be to help them resist their oppressor. So it's important to make that distinction, even though it is a very gray area. Now, this is a source of debate always, but I'm a big proponent of the alignment system being more of a suggestive role play tool than a solid um, iron bar that should not be bent type thing. So it's one of those things where you can really play with, I think, a little bit and interpret based upon how your character would see things. And I think that's going to play a big part in a situation such as this. So, based upon their reaction, we have the outskirts of town. We've already discussed the forest as a playing field, as an adventure terrain. So the forest itself is a blasted waste of a forest. It's pretty much nothing but dead trees and old limbs and rotted undergrowth and rocky terrain. Um, there's a mist that's always hanging there. There's a lot of good places to hide. Vision is really down. Even if you have dark vision, mist is mist. Um, so there is some disruption there with low light vision. So it offers a lot of tense moments. It offers a lot of ambush type locations, traps, pitfalls, hidden structures, that type of thing. It's a great plot hook to get them out there and get them exploring and let them find things that you create, want to put out there. Where are the burnt crows meeting? Do they have a stash out there? Do they have an enclave that stations out there, a camp, something where they stash goods and weapons? There's a lot of, those are small, but a lot of ideas that you could come up with, I think, to help flesh that out. And of course, I would imagine that they also have a location in the city somewhere. And we already established, thanks to Master Mist, that their leader is actually hiding in plain sight within the Order of the Benevolence as a specialist dealing with the mental maladies of the people of the town. So he's got an easy spot there. But where do you hide an entire cell of scarred individuals? That would be the question. Now, obviously, the sewers are an easy choice. It's hard to just integrate them into the general populace because the Shanakijans do stand out a bit because of the scarring. So there's an inherent challenge there. But I'd like to think that there is a small handful, a call center. Honestly, that would work if you're playing in a modern setting with a similar situation. A call center would actually be a great idea for a modern or futuristic setting. But I think in our case, probably not so much unless they're using tin cans on string, which, as funny as that would be, I think might take away from the seriousness of the situation just a bit. We'll save that for our next round of Toon, the cartoon role-playing game. But no, I mean, I think, and a lot of authors have explored this concept before. There are certain types of people and jobs that common folk will intentionally avert their eyes from and not pay any mind to. Homeless people, people with jobs that they find distasteful, like the guy that scrapes horse poo off the sides of the roads, that type of thing. So it'd be real easy to hide people in those types of situations and also allow for them to keep a real easy ear to the ground, because when people don't recognize another individual, and I'm sorry I'm getting into some real kind of heavy stuff, but keep in mind that we are talking about just a role-playing game. Let's not get into real life too much here, but people who view other people as a less than human, let's say, like in this particular example, will say things around them without thinking. So this is some of the best spies possibly in any given situation. It's one of the reasons why, if you've ever read The Hunchback of Notre Dame, the Thieves Guild listed in that story, they would always go out and beg and plead and pretend to be cripples and amputees and people with birth defects, because not only did they get the sympathy card, but they also, people don't pay any attention to them. They don't want to look at them and acknowledge them. So it gives them a little more free rein to listen and to look and to watch and to, apply their trade. No different here. It gives you a fine fundamental foundation upon which to hide a handful of this cell right there in plain sight, just like the good doctor in the Order of the Benevolence. So now we have a small spy network. We have a leader that's actively undermining the mental health of the people that come through the clinic. We have a stash, potentially under guard of a powerful lycanthrope, out in the blasted forests, and a party set between the two of them. What side will they take, of course, is always up to the party, but you've given them options. As long as they don't just throw their hands up and walk away from it, I think you've got it. You've got them in this particular case. Just hope, beyond hoping, that they do not go there, because they may. But beyond that, I think this is one of those hooks that drives itself. I think in this particular case. So within our city of Silver Falls, thus far, we have built an infrastructure. We have given it a history. We've given it a soul, and we've given it a plot. We know a lot of the little details now. Um, Really, a big part of all that's left is to start mapping this thing out and deciding what buildings go where and what services beyond the basic infrastructure exist. Um, and I think if we do that, we can flesh that out with some NPCs, maybe a few bits of flavor here and there, and we will have a fully functional, viable town or city. I know Scrig. I'm not sure he's on right now, but he joins us in our Discord from time to time, and he's a game master himself. He's been working on, I believe, a creation of his own. He's come to us with some questions on how to make um, towns and cities. He felt, I believe, that he was getting a little overwhelmed, and in this particular instance, this is the type of thing I would recommend. Now, granted, we've done this. I believe this is our fourth episode. So this is about 2 hours of work. You could probably cut that in half if it wasn't just me jabbering, the whole time. But it can be done, and I know it's a daunting bit of work if you have a whole world laid out in front of you. But as I mentioned to him, the best advice I can give you in this particular type of case, and I say this to you because it happens to me, happens to a lot of game masters, especially when you're creating a homebrew, is that you create a map. I will jabber more. Thank you, Master Miss. I will jabber plenty more. Um, but it's easy to get overwhelmed when you have a full map sitting out and say you start thinking to yourself, "Oh my God, I need to populate this with towns for my players to travel through, and every one of them needs to have some type of unique flavor and a purpose and a reason for existing." And next thing you know, you're looking at 100 towns and thinking, "Oh my God, what do I do?" Take it one at a time. I know it's a little daunting, and it seems like it's a lot of work, and it is. Being a game master actually does take a lot of work, but it's if you love it, it's not a problem. So take your time, do it one town at a time, just like we've done here with Silver Falls. Get with friends, as I do here, the people in Discord, the people here on Twitch, and elsewhere. There's a lot of supportive groups out there that you can join through Facebook and Reddit and whatnot who will happily help you with ideas. In fact, I see it all the time where a DM will come up and say, "Hey, how does A affect B so I can get C?" And within 30 minutes, there's 200 responses for him to choose from. It's a wonderful tool out there for you to use. So don't get inundated, don't get overwhelmed. Take it one step at a time. Of course, we here at Homebrew RP are always here for you if you have questions or concerns or need help or ideas. We love helping people. In fact, we've got a really good response time. There's usually somebody here that can answer your questions. And we do want to meet you. We do want to hear your stories. We do want to see what you're working on. We'd love it if you joined our community. And we'd love to even have you come maybe do some gaming with us. And we hope to see you really soon if you do that. Um, as always, you can contact us through any of the links below. Please be sure to check out the art of Stephen Rhodes over there. The art of Stephen Rhodes, as shown there. If you want to buy me a t-shirt, that's a very good choice, the one I have displayed there. Of course, if you do pay attention to our games, we'd love to see your fan fiction artwork and love letters to our characters and players, and of course, me. It's okay. Don't be shy. But yeah, please reach out. Let us know. It's been fun once again. I think I'm going to go ahead and call it here. In case you missed it in the beginning. I am the Church Warden, aka the Wonka, coming to you live from the Lilly Pad here at the epicenter of the multiverse on Homebrew Roleplay. Putting my face in your interwebs. Thank you. And good night.